This is Open to Work, honest conversations about looking for work, getting work, and what to do when there is no work. Previously, I spoke to Matthew Diener from the Screen Producers Association of Australia about some of the challenges that face Australian television professionals. This week, I want to talk about the attitudes of everyday Australians and what we can do to move the industry forward. One thing I'm also curious about, Matt, is, a lot would change if the government stepped in and looked at some quota laws around the streamers. It feels like they're not particularly enthusiastic to do that just yet. And I think that might be part of, and this is just my interpretation, it feels like the public don't really want to push for it. Again, like I said, I just talk to people and they're like, oh, we didn't even know it was a problem. I don't really care about, having more Australian shows or less Australian shows. As long as I get my Game of Thrones or Bridgerton or whatever, then I'm kind of happy.
Who are you talking to? You need new friends.
I like to talk to people outside of our industry. Talk to those family members who are like, I just watch TV. I don't actually know what you do. And yeah, it just feels like they just don't really care. So what's something that we as practitioners within this industry can do to help the Australian public understand that a loss of screen culture is a loss of culture?
Can we unpack this for a little bit if we've got the time to do that? Because we've done at different points research about Australians and their appetite for Australian content and what their likes and dislikes are. And what Australians, I think, generally want is stories that they can connect to and relate to. And they generally will put that at the top of the tin in terms of what they think is the most valuable thing, but they want it to be comparably well made.
Sure.
And that usually means comparable dollars. Now, the problem for Australia is it's a small population base compared to the US or a global exercise, or even the UK, and those countries have a capacity to generate very, very large budgets. They're still risky budgets, but they've got businesses that deliver those works that have got many, many years of distribution controls and access to many other cultures through English language that then monetize the risk associated with a Game of Thrones or a very large drama or piece that's come from the United States. And Australia's part of that servicing piece back in terms of dollars, courtesy of distribution arrangements for content that HBO might have. We need resources to make content at that scale, because what happens in Australian budgets is, in order to deal with a smaller budget on a drama series, that means that the script ambitions of that production has to change. And I think audiences, now that they've got access to every piece of content ever made across the world, they are going to go to the pieces that excite them and deliver for them. And so the bar has been raised, right? So our conversation with government is, well, we've got to, we can't go backwards. We've got to raise the bar up, right? You've got to have the resourcing to be able to compete in that global game now. That's a challenge for the sector, and it means that you've got to have the piece that's sitting behind that, which is well-financed organisations to be able to fund it. Now, the beauty is you've got streamers that are making a lot of money in the Australian context. We're sort of seen as globally as a honeypot for these businesses because we have a big audience base, so they're delivering significant money to the streamers, 5 billion plus. Part of the campaigning piece to the government has been that we need to be able to compete in that way, and you've got to have businesses that would otherwise be, in their interest, if they can deliver audiences without having to deliver more, they just would do that and take the money out of Australia. And we're going, well, we need to kind of have some sort of benchmark for reinvestment for all those businesses in their own content that's made locally, and then that's a better outcome for everyone, including for the audiences. And the challenge for audiences is that there's a salience bias, right? If you only ever present people with certain things, they don't necessarily miss the things. They're dealing with the biases of what's in front of them, and so they're going to go with that. But if we can keep giving them things that aren't necessarily in front of them, and we surprise them with things, then it's a change of conversation for them. People think of Australian content when they start to unpick it in a conversational research sense, going, I don't watch a lot of it.
Right.
And then they go, but it's important. They still acknowledge it's important, even if they think they're not watching it. It's a bit like they need to have, of course we need to have it. We've got to have it for our kids. We've got to have it for other people.
Yeah.
And then you unpick it a bit more and they go, actually, you're watching quite a bit more than you say you are. The information we receive through screens is pretty impactful, right? And we've needed systems of control around that go back since World War II. Now, I'm not going to overinflame the current state of the world at the moment, but what was playing out at that point was this fear of communism, a fear of the
Yeah.
Red Peril, a fear of influence that was coming post World War II, and there were controls around the media so that there was a sense that Australia could make sure that audiences at least had access to, and in fact were controlled around the rules of broadcasting, what you could deliver in terms of lines of vision, and rules around Australian content that were quite precise, so that people got a sense of their own identity in amongst what might be a more confusing or influencing scope of what was going on globally.
Mm.
You jump it to now and you go, gee, the phone has
Mm.
changed a lot of things. People are being influenced by what's on Twitter, what's on Meta, what's on YouTube, what's on
TikTok.
lots of things.
Yeah.
So TikTok, exactly. So, and where
Mm.
are those messages coming from, and the confusion around that, and what are the influences of watching American shows now, or American shows that are funded by Chinese product money, and all these sort of layers of what's going on there, and who's being portrayed as the villain, who's being portrayed as the
Mm.
good guy, what are the ideals of authenticity that are being built into the types of programming that people are watching. How did we end up with a President Trump?
Mm.
We had it because of a reality TV show that
Yeah.
branded and presented a man in a sort of a certain way, right? These are important factors that influence people, and so you go, our screen culture has this capacity and need to be thoughtfully made
Mm.
if we want to preserve and connect to a sense of who we are, because there's otherwise it can very easily become a propaganda exercise. Then you start going, what is the value, what is the opportunity, what are the control pieces around that, and do we need to think more about that in this
Mm.
current day and age? The government, I don't think it's lost interest in the whole regulation piece at
Okay.
all. The timing went a bit AWOL in the lead up to what was this presidential election that's happened
Yep.
last year, and a type of behaviour that you're seeing now from the United States more explicitly, but it was happening behind the scenes. But I don't think that ambition's changed. So, I do think there's a bit of patience, unfortunately, for
Hmm.
the industry at a point when maybe people, of course, are impatient. They're looking for results from the government, as I am, but
Yeah.
that's the challenge currently. And I think, in the current context of the type of trade conversations globally, it's probably, thoughtful about how we play our cards at this point as well, for broad
Yeah.
reasons.
Sure.
So, yeah.
As somebody who's just a boots on the ground producer working within the machine of unscripted, it does feel like it's really dropped off the radar from a government point of view. But that's quite heartening to hear that it
Mm.
is still top of mind and there are still conversations happening. What is something that somebody who is watching this today, who is a scripted or factual producer, what's something we can start doing to rejuvenate our career, move forward with screen culture and kind of look forward to a screen industry that we can all be proud of? Is it about just making more content and putting it out on various social platforms?
Mm.
Is it being more entrepreneurial? Is it being more vocal about our industry and the challenge that face us? From your point of view, what can we all
Mm.
start doing today?
That's a really great question, because you want people to be proactive in the industry for their own probably mental health, as well as their business interests,
Yeah.
as well as the health of the industry. So there's a big piece about working together and collaboratively, even though there are lots of islands of the people. One of my frustrations is the people that don't come to things, that don't participate through bodies, and want us. I just, not that, of course I'm running one, but I always think working together is the way to move the dial,
Mm.
because we can't individually. That doesn't work. It just never has. But I also think there's participation is, even if it's not an active participation, but it's resources to whatever guild people are part of. Those things, they carry a lot forward, and it's unfair for some people to be helping to resource things and others sitting on the outside of that. So I always think participation is important in whatever form. The second bundle of thinking is, we do a number of campaign pieces which are designed to help people participate in effectively a campaign discussion without necessarily needing to be a member of anyone particularly. But on our website at the moment, which is screenproducers.org.au, there are tools that are set up to help people have conversations with other people in the industry, with other people from outside the industry, but particularly to have conversations with local politicians. As a candidate for government, if they are aware in the lead up to the government into an election and then receive the benefit of being elected and moving to the federal parliament, particularly, if they see active parts of the industry talking to them about the fact that they're members of the industry, that they either have jobs in the industry, that they've been affected by certain things, or that they've got a business in their electorate, and that there are a set of challenges ahead of the sector broadly, that even if you're not getting into the exact thickets of every issue, you are seeding and helping advance the industry with people that ultimately are going to be making decisions in and out of houses of parliament to
Yeah.
advance the sector. We're in a very critical stage of an election cycle where people can get in front of people and be active, right? On our website, there is a pledge you can download. You can take to a politician and ask them to pledge support for the sector. You can take photographs, put them on socials, give them to the politician. Those little small conversations that go on all the time really make a big influencing part. I think a lot of people sometimes think, oh, what's the use unless I can be in front of the Prime Minister
Yeah.
or, the Minister of the day, and I can't, I have a soliloquy I've planned and it's a half-hour speech and that will be the thing that changes the dial. It actually isn't any of that, really. It's about small conversations with all of the members of parliament in and around your own experiences that shift the dial. And then for your own career, engagement and progression, it can be really isolating. You're either on set and busy and intense, and sometimes that's very bonding and
Mm.
strong. But if you're not in work or you've got downtime, you can feel very discombobulated by not being connected to things. Sort of the social elements of the industry, the workshops, the learning experiences, they're very much, yes, they advance your thinking about what's happening in the industry and can give you that sort of a mental kind of stimulus and realization of what's going on. But you've got to invest in your own career, right? And you've got to
Yeah.
keep that knowledge base up, and doing it on a desktop on alerts is one thing, but then you spend time with people talking about what's happening and understanding what people are up to and building relationships, connections in a very human connecting industry. I think you learn a great deal. I always think that people come away changed from those experiences, and that will be as equally a drink at a bar at the end
Mm.
of a day of a conference or da da da.
Mm.
Now, we love to plug our own conference because it's the
Sure.
biggest in the country, but there are many
Mm.
of them. And our conference is coming up in May in the Gold Coast. We put it on as producers, but the point being is it's there as a tent for everyone to participate in. And it tries to bring the whole of the space together to think about the way the industry is moving forward and create connections for new partnerships. And it's there that you discover, if you want to be, to your point about being entrepreneurial, that you can actually you've been put in a box all your career that actually you can break out of that box. This industry is pretty easy in some ways to reinvent yourself because
Mm.
things come and go, and project by project you can kind of put on and develop new skills in between and be prepared to be the safety officer or the stunt development person or the production coordinator or the I don't know. You can develop people and develop your own pathways, but you can also come up with projects. And I think that's what's always surprising. Don't ever sit quietly and go quietly into the night. You can absolutely talk to people and get something you didn't realize moving faster than you realized, maybe
Mm.
by just being proactive about that. And there's an old adage that producers don't make things, they force things. And so there's a little bit of forcing and going, okay, I really want
Mm.
to do this, really want to do this. And you'd be surprised at how many people with the right, good heart space around what you're trying to do, come behind you to back you up and bring you together to make things work. So, I'd always say be active. If you're in this industry, you want to create things, you're going to deny yourself what it means to be human.
Mm.
If you're not just working on even small things and just continuing. I think talking to other people in those forums is probably the best advice I've got, and being a participant. Yeah.
That is amazing advice. I think we can take a lot from that and this broader interview today. I know you're very busy, particularly at this time, so I want to thank you for being so generous with your time and your advice. And yeah, if people want to find more information, you mentioned the website. Do you want to just plug it one more time?
Screen Forever is our website for the conference, and screenproducers.org.au is our a home for the organisation more broadly. So yeah, look us up there, and you'll certainly find a lot of the things we're talking about, and you'll be able to follow the dotted lines of a lot of the policy conversations we're having all the time by doing that as well. So
Great.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
My thanks to Matthew Diener for being my guest today. Thanks to lowkii Productions for helping me put all of this together. And thanks to you for watching. See you next time.